I never thought I'd be writing a story like this, but here I am, a guy whose world just got turned upside down. My name is Mike, and I've been married to Jessica for 5 years. Our relationship started off like a fairy tale. We met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and fell in love amid the chaos of exams and social events. It was all roses and laughter until the past few months when I began to notice something was off. At first, it was subtle. Jessica, who used to text me throughout the day, suddenly became distant. I brushed it off, thinking she was just busy with her new job. She was so excited when she got it, but the hours were long, and I figured that was the cause. But then she started coming home later and later, with vague excuses about work meetings and drinks with coworkers. I could tell something was different in her tone. The usual warmth was replaced by a coldness that felt like a brick wall. One night after she had come home almost 2 hours late, I confronted her about it. She gave me one of those half-hearted smiles and said, "You worry too much, Mike. I'm just trying to impress my boss." I wanted to believe her, but a nagging feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. Those little signs began to add up: how she'd leave her phone face down, how she took it with her everywhere, even to the bathroom. Then came the day that changed everything. I had a rare day off work, and while I was lounging around the house, I decided to do something nice for Jessica. I remembered she had mentioned a new restaurant she wanted to try, so I thought I'd surprise her with a dinner reservation. I was just about to get in the shower when I heard a ping her phone. It was a message from someone named Ryan. I shouldn't have looked, but curiosity got the better of me. When I opened the message, my heart dropped. It was a flirty exchange, complete with emojis and inside jokes I didn't understand. "Can't wait to see you tonight," it read. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I hadn't seen her all day. She was supposed to be working late, and here she was planning to meet this guy. My heart raced and I couldn't think straight. Suddenly everything clicked into place: the late nights, the distraction, the emotional distance. I had to confront her, but I wasn't prepared for what would come next. The minute she walked through the door, I could smell the perfume she never wore. It was like a slap in the face. I waited until she settled in, and then I hit her with it. "Who's Ryan?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. At first she looked confused, and then her face turned to stone. "What are you talking about?" she replied, feigning innocence. I could see the gears turning in her mind as she scrambled to come up with a lie. I pulled out my phone and showed her the messages. The color drained from her face, and for a split second I saw fear in her eyes. "You don't understand. It's not what you think," she exclaimed. The way she tried to twist it, make it sound innocent, made my blood boil. She claimed it was just a work thing, that Ryan was a colleague she was close with, but deep down I knew it was a lie. The confrontation escalated quickly. I was furious, and she was defensive, throwing out excuses and vague explanations that made no sense. "You've been so distant. I thought you'd be happier if I found something to do outside of the house," she shouted, as if that justified her betrayal. I felt like I was losing my mind. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built a life with was standing before me, lying through her teeth. By the end of the night, I was left feeling hollow. I had so many questions that went unanswered, but the ultimate one stuck in my mind like a thorn. How could I have been so blind? This wasn't just a betrayal. It felt like a complete unraveling of everything I thought our marriage stood for. Now, I had to navigate this emotional minefield. I felt angry, betrayed, and most of all, heartbroken. I didn't know what to do next. How do you move forward when the foundation of your life feels like it's crumbling? I needed a plan, a way to process what had just happened. I wanted to confront her again, but I also needed to figure out how to protect myself. I didn't want to rush into forgiveness or make a hasty decision about our future. If only I could turn back time to when everything felt right. But now, I had to face the harsh reality of my situation and decide what to do with this mess. After that explosive confrontation, I spent the next few days in a haze. I couldn't focus on work, and every time Jessica walked into the room, I felt a mix of anger and disbelief. I kept replaying our conversation in my mind, trying to figure out where I had gone wrong. Was I not enough? Did I push her away? The questions haunted me like ghosts, and I felt trapped in this whirlwind of betrayal. Jessica, on the other hand, seemed to go into damage control. She started acting like nothing had happened, trying to play the role of the perfect wife. She would make dinner, put on that sweet smile, and even tried to initiate conversations about our future, asking me how I felt about taking a trip together. I was disgusted. It was like she thought she could just sweep everything under the rug and go back to normal. Every time she smiled at me, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I couldn't trust her anymore. The thought of her with Ryan, the guy who had become the embodiment of my worst fears, made my blood boil. I decided I needed to gather more evidence. I wanted to know the extent of her betrayal before I made any decisions about our future. One evening, after she had gone to bed, I tiptoed into her office. Jessica was meticulous about her things, and I knew she kept her phone charger there. I quickly glanced through her laptop and searched for any clues. I found emails that made it clear this work friendship was something much more. There were discussions about meeting in hotels, secret trips, and plans that didn't involve me at all. My heart raced as I read through the details. It was all right there, laid out in black and white, and it confirmed my worst fears. I spent hours sifting through everything, my mind racing with thoughts of revenge and justice. She thought she could get away with this. I wanted her to feel the pain she had inflicted on me. I felt like a puppet master pulling the strings on my own emotional chaos. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I decided to confront her again, but this time I would go in with a different approach. I wanted her to realize the weight of her actions, to see how deeply she had hurt me. So I crafted a plan. I'd gather all the evidence and lay it out for her, forcing her to look at the reality of what she had done. The next day, while she was out, I set everything up. I printed all the emails and messages, and I even compiled a timeline of her late nights and suspicious behavior. I positioned it all neatly on the dining table, making sure it was the first thing she'd see when she came home. When she walked in, her expression shifted from joy to confusion in an instant. She looked at the table, then at me, and I could see the color drain from her face. "What is this?" she stammered, and I felt a surge of satisfaction. "This is the truth, Jessica," I said, keeping my voice steady. "You can't lie your way out of this one. I've seen everything." Her facade crumbled as she realized I had uncovered her lies. "Mike, please, it's not what you think," she cried, her voice shaky. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I laid it all out for her, each email, each message, and every detail of her betrayal. I watched as she attempted to twist her way out of it, claiming it was just a fling, that she never meant for it to go this far. The excuses poured out like a broken dam, but I was done listening. "Did you ever think about me?" I asked, cutting her off. "When you were planning all of this, did you ever stop to wonder how it would affect our life together?" She broke down, tears streaming down her face as she tried to explain. "I felt lonely. You were so focused on work, and I wanted attention, Mike." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The blame shifted onto me, and the anger I felt boiled over. "So you think cheating is the solution? You could have talked to me, but instead, you chose to betray everything we built together." The confrontation escalated into a full-blown argument, each of us shouting and throwing accusations. I felt the anger flood my veins as she tried to paint herself as the victim. It was infuriating, and I realized then that there was no way to salvage this. After the dust settled and silence filled the room, I sat down, exhausted. I felt like I had been through a tornado and somehow emerged with more clarity. I had all the evidence I needed, and now I had to decide how to proceed. As I looked at Jessica, a mix of anger and sadness washed over me. This wasn't just about the infidelity, it was about the trust that had been shattered. I had a choice to make: to fight for a marriage that felt broken beyond repair, or to walk away and reclaim my dignity. I knew I had to think carefully about my next steps. I wanted revenge, but I also needed to consider what would be best for me in the long run. It was time to take control of my life again. The days after my confrontation with Jessica were some of the hardest of my life. It was like living in a fog. I could see my reality clearly, but my emotions were a jumbled mess. I wanted to scream, to punch a wall, to do anything to release the pent-up anger that was coursing through me. But I also felt a deep sense of sadness. The woman I had married, the person I thought I knew, was nothing more than a stranger now. The trust had been obliterated, and I realized I couldn't just sweep this under the rug. Jessica tried to act as if things could go back to normal, but every time she reached out to me, I recoiled. I was no longer the person who could accept her excuses and manipulative words. Instead, I became hyper-aware of her every movement, her every word, as if I were a detective watching a suspect. There were moments I could feel her eyes on me, waiting for a reaction, hoping for a glimmer of the love we once had. But I felt like I was at a crossroads, and the road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty. One night, unable to bear the silence any longer, I decided to talk to a friend, Jard. We had been close since college, and he was one of the few people I could trust. I met him at a bar, and over a couple of beers, I spilled my guts about Jessica. I recounted the details of my discovery, the confrontation, and my emotional roller coaster since. Jard listened intently, shaking his head in disbelief. "Man, that's messed up," he said, taking another sip of his drink. "You deserve better than that. Why would you want to stay with someone who clearly doesn't value you?" His words rang true, and I felt a sense of relief in sharing my pain. But I also felt guilty. There was a part of me that wanted to fight for my marriage, to try and make things work despite the betrayal. But how could I trust her again? Jard must have sensed my inner turmoil because he leaned forward and said, "Look, Mike, you need to do what's best for you. If she's not willing to be honest and put in the effort, then it's time to move on. Think about your happiness." His advice resonated with me. As much as I wanted to hold on to the dream of our marriage, the reality was that I was unhappy, and I had been for a while now. The trust was gone, and I wasn't sure if I could ever get it back. That night, I went home with a renewed sense of purpose. I wanted to confront Jessica one last time and lay out my thoughts clearly. I needed her to understand that I wouldn't tolerate her lies any longer and that I was ready to take back control of my life. When I got home, Jessica was already in bed, scrolling through her phone. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her for a moment, then took a deep breath. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low but firm. She looked up, her expression shifting from annoyance to anxiety. "About what?" "About us," I replied, trying to keep my emotions in check. "I've thought a lot about everything that's happened, and I've come to a decision." I could see the tension in her body as she sat up straighter, waiting for me to continue. "I can't keep living like this. I can't pretend everything is okay when it's not. You've shattered my trust, Jessica, and I don't think I can ever feel safe in this marriage again." Her face fell, and I could see the realization dawning on her. "Mike, please, I can change. I can make it up to you." I shook my head. "No, you can't. This isn't about me not loving you. It's about the choices you made. You chose to betray me, and I can't ignore that. It's too painful." "What are you saying? Are you leaving?" she asked, panic creeping into her voice. "I'm saying I need time apart," I replied, my heart heavy. "I need to figure out who I am without you. I can't continue to live in this chaos." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she pleaded with me, but I stood firm. I couldn't let her emotional manipulation shift my decision. "I'm sorry, Jessica. This is for the best. I need to take care of myself now." With that, I walked out of the room, feeling a mix of relief and heartbreak. I had made my decision, but it didn't come without pain. I felt a sense of freedom, but also an overwhelming sadness for what could have been. The following days were a blur of emotions. I packed my things and moved into a small apartment, a space that felt like a breath of fresh air compared to the weight of the past. I started focusing on myself, diving into hobbies I had neglected and spending time with friends. I began to reclaim my identity, the pieces of me that had been lost in the turmoil of our relationship. However, the emotional toll of the situation lingered. I still felt moments of weakness, where I missed the good times Jessica and I had shared. It was a constant battle between my heart and my mind, but I always reminded myself of the betrayal that led me down this path. I was learning to prioritize my well-being over the toxic remnants of my marriage. As I settled into my new routine, I found myself reflecting more on what I wanted for my future. Despite the heartache, I felt a flicker of hope. I had the chance to start fresh, to rebuild my life. I didn't know what the future held, but I was determined to face it on my terms, free from the shadows of betrayal. As I settled into my new apartment, I felt a strange sense of liberation mixed with sadness. It was a small space, but it was mine, devoid of the memories that had haunted me in the house I once shared with Jessica. I bought some simple furniture, a comfy couch, and a coffee maker that I had always wanted. Little by little, I was crafting a new life, even if it wasn't the one I had envisioned just a few months earlier. The first couple of weeks were tough. I had moments where I'd reach for my phone to text Jessica, only to remember that I had made the decision to cut ties. I had no real desire to hear her voice or see her try to manipulate me into feeling guilty for leaving. I was learning to embrace my solitude, spending time reflecting in the quiet. In those moments alone, I found solace in writing. I started journaling my feelings, trying to process the whirlwind of emotions I had been experiencing. I wrote about everything, the good times, the bad, and the painful betrayal. It became a therapeutic exercise, allowing me to pour out the hurt and confusion that had plagued me for so long. As the weeks passed, I also began reconnecting with friends. Jard was a constant support, often dragging me out to bars or to see live music on weekends. One night, as we sat in a dimly lit bar with a few other friends, I found myself laughing and enjoying life again for the first time in months. It was a welcome relief to step outside of my own chaos and immerse myself in the camaraderie of friendship. Each moment of laughter felt like a tiny victory against the heartache. But then came the day when I received a text that made my heart skip a beat. It was from Jessica. My phone vibrated on the table and I stared at the screen, unsure if I wanted to open it. Memories of our last confrontation flooded back, and I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. Finally, I gathered the courage to read the message. "Mike, I miss you. Can we talk?" My gut reaction was to ignore it, to let it fade into nothingness. But there was a part of me that wondered what she might say. Did she truly miss me, or was she just feeling the weight of her actions? I thought about how I had vowed to reclaim my life, and I felt a mix of anger and pity for the woman I used to love. After contemplating for a few hours, I decided to agree to meet her, not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I wanted closure. I needed to hear her side of things one last time, and I wanted to make it clear that I had moved on. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop, a neutral ground where I wouldn't feel trapped. When I walked in, I saw her sitting at a table by the window, looking the same yet different. She had lost some weight and her eyes were puffy, probably from sleepless nights. As I approached, I felt an odd sense of familiarity, but also a wall that had been built between us. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us unsure how to break the ice. Finally, she spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since we last talked." "Yeah, about what?" She hesitated, her fingers fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater. "About us, about what I did. I know I messed up, but I want you to know that I never meant to hurt you." I felt a surge of anger rise up in me. "You say that now, but you made a choice, Jessica. You chose to be with someone else instead of working on our problems." "I know," she admitted, tears welling in her eyes. "I was selfish. I thought it would make me happy, but it only made things worse. I miss you, Mike. I miss us." Her words struck a chord, and for a brief moment I felt my resolve waver. I thought about all the good times, the laughter, the plans we had made, but the betrayal still loomed heavy in my heart. "Jessica, it's not that simple," I said, my voice steady but firm. "You broke my trust. I don't know if I can ever forgive you for what you did." "I understand," she replied, her voice cracking. "I'm not asking you to forgive me right now. I just wanted to let you know that I'm sorry and that I've been working on myself. I've been in therapy and I'm trying to understand why I acted the way I did." I listened, but I remained skeptical. "Therapy is great, but it doesn't change what happened between us. You still chose to betray me." "I know," she said, a sob escaping her lips. "But I hope that one day you can at least see that I'm trying to change." We talked for a while longer, and I found myself torn between empathy and anger. I could see how much she was hurting, but I also knew that I couldn't go back to the person I was before her betrayal. I had spent too much time rebuilding myself to let her back in so easily. As our conversation started to wind down, I made my stance clear. "I appreciate you reaching out, but I need to stick to my decision. I'm not ready to be in each other's lives like we used to be. I need to focus on my own healing." She nodded, sadness etched on her face. And I could tell she understood. "I get it. I just wanted you to know that I've changed, and I hope one day you can see that." With that, we parted ways, and as I walked back to my apartment, I felt a sense of closure. I had faced the woman who had broken my heart, and instead of feeling weakened, I felt empowered. The meeting had not changed my decision, but it had reaffirmed my path forward. I was ready to move on, ready to embrace new experiences and relationships without being haunted by the past. I realized that healing takes time, but with each step I took, I was getting closer to becoming the person I wanted to be, free from the shadows of betrayal. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself settling into this new chapter of my life. I had stopped checking my phone obsessively for messages from Jessica. I had effectively cut ties. I started focusing on my career, pouring my energy into work and picking up extra projects where I could. It felt good to dive into something that was entirely mine, something that didn't involve the emotional baggage of my past with Jessica. I also took the opportunity to invest in myself. I rediscovered hobbies I had shelved during our marriage. I took up running, something I had always enjoyed but never had the time for. There was something liberating about lacing up my sneakers and hitting the pavement, feeling the rush of endorphins wash over me after a long jog. I even joined a local running club where I met some incredible people who shared my passion. One of the new friends I made was Sarah, a fierce and independent woman with a radiant smile and a contagious laugh. We clicked instantly, bonding over shared interests and experiences. She had her own story of heartache and betrayal, but she had emerged stronger, ready to embrace life head-on. Our friendship blossomed into something deeper, and I found myself slowly opening up to the idea of dating again. One weekend, after a long run, Sarah and I grabbed coffee and chatted about life, love, and aspirations. It felt refreshing to share laughs and dreams without the weight of past betrayals clouding my thoughts. I realized how much I had craved this connection, something genuine and honest. As we talked, I found myself wanting to share my story with her about my marriage and the pain of betrayal. I needed to be upfront about my past, especially if things were heading in a romantic direction. "I want to be honest with you," I said, my voice slightly hesitant. "I recently went through a tough breakup. My ex-wife cheated on me, and it's been a journey to heal from that." Sarah listened intently, her eyes filled with understanding. "I can relate. I went through something similar, and it's hard. But I believe that we can learn from our pasts and use those lessons to grow." Her words resonated with me deeply. It was comforting to know that I wasn't alone in this experience. As we talked more about our feelings and fears, I felt a connection that was genuine and refreshing. Over the next few weeks, our friendship blossomed into romance. We started going on casual dates, exploring the city together, and enjoying each other's company without the baggage of our histories weighing us down. It felt exhilarating to share laughter and dreams again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was moving forward. However, even as I embraced my new relationship, I couldn't completely shake the memories of my past. There were days when I'd find myself lost in thought, remembering the betrayal and wondering if I was truly ready to give my heart away again. I'd catch myself overthinking things, analyzing every word and gesture from Sarah. One evening, after a particularly great date, we found ourselves sitting on a park bench, enjoying the cool night air. I looked into her eyes and felt a wave of vulnerability wash over me. "Can I be honest with you?" I asked. "Of course," she replied, her expression warm and inviting. "I'm really enjoying our time together, but I'm also scared," I admitted. "I've been hurt before, and I don't want to bring that into what we have." She reached for my hand, squeezing it gently. "It's okay to be scared, Mike. We've both been through a lot, but it's also important to allow ourselves to feel joy and love again. We can take things slow, and I'll be here every step of the way." Her reassurance calmed my nerves, and I realized that I didn't have to rush into anything. I could take my time, let the relationship develop naturally, and focus on building a solid foundation based on trust and honesty. With each passing day, I felt more at ease. I was learning to embrace the present and not let my past dictate my future. I was learning to trust again, not only in Sarah but in myself. But just as I began to feel grounded in this new direction, an unexpected message popped up on my phone one afternoon. It was from Jessica. My heart raced as I read the message. "Hey Mike, can we talk? I really need to see you." The request stirred up a whirlwind of emotions. I felt anger, confusion, and a hint of dread. Hadn't I just started to move on? Wasn't I finally finding happiness again? Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, but another part felt the weight of unresolved issues lingering between us. I took a deep breath, trying to process my feelings. Did I owe her a conversation? Or would it only complicate things further? After much deliberation, I decided to respond. "What do you want to talk about?" Her reply was quick. "I just need to explain some things. Can we meet?" I agreed to meet her, but I approached it with caution. I had no idea what she wanted to say, but I was determined to stand my ground. I wouldn't allow her to disrupt the progress I had made in my life. As the day of our meeting approached, I felt a mix of anxiety and resolve. I was prepared to hear her out, but I would also make it clear that I was moving forward with my life, whether she liked it or not. The day finally arrived for my meeting with Jessica, and I could hardly shake the knot of tension in my stomach. I had agreed to meet at a quiet park, a place filled with memories but also a fresh start. I wanted to keep the atmosphere neutral, stripping away the weight of our past. As I walked toward the park bench where we agreed to meet, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. When I saw her sitting there, I was struck by how much she had changed. She looked different, more vulnerable than I remembered. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes held a hint of sadness. For a fleeting moment, I felt a pang of empathy, but I quickly reminded myself of the betrayal that had shattered my world. I couldn't let nostalgia cloud my judgment. "Mike," she said softly as I approached, looking up at me with those familiar eyes that I had once loved deeply. "Thank you for meeting me." "Let's just get to it, Jessica. What did you want to talk about?" I replied, my tone firm but not unkind. She took a deep breath, grappling with her words. "I know I hurt you and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I've been working on myself. I've realized how wrong I was and how much I took for granted in our marriage." I remained silent, letting her continue. "I've been in therapy, like I mentioned before," she continued. "I thought I could fix my issues by escaping into another relationship, but it only made me more lost. I've had to face the truth about who I am and why I acted the way I did." I listened, keeping my expression neutral. I had heard this type of rhetoric before, yet something in her tone made me pause. It was the sincerity I had been searching for during our last confrontation. Still, I had to be cautious. "Jessica, I appreciate that you're trying to make sense of what happened, but that doesn't change the fact that you betrayed my trust. You broke our vows." "I know," she said, and I could see tears welling in her eyes. "I can't take back what I did, and I wish I could. I just want you to know that I've learned from this. I'm not asking for you back. I need you to understand how much I regret my choices." Her vulnerability struck a chord within me. I could see she had genuinely been working on herself, but it was still difficult to reconcile those feelings with the anger I had harbored for so long. "It's not that easy, Jessica. I can't just forget everything and move on as if nothing happened." "I know," she replied, her voice breaking. "I just wanted the chance to express how truly sorry I am, and that I wish you nothing but the best moving forward." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of our shared history flooding my mind. "I appreciate you saying that, but I am moving forward. I've started to reclaim my life and I've met someone new. I can't go back to what we had. The trust is gone." A flicker of pain crossed her face, but she quickly composed herself. "I understand. I just hope you find happiness, Mike. That's all I ever wanted for you. I truly am sorry for everything." We sat in silence for a moment, processing the gravity of what had passed between us. It felt like a final farewell, a release of the burden that had weighed us down for so long. I realized that the anger I had felt toward her was starting to transform into acceptance. I was finally learning to let go. "Thank you for being honest with me," I said, my voice steady. "It's time for both of us to move on and find our own paths." Jessica nodded. a bittersweet smile on her face. "I hope you find peace, Mike. You deserve it." We stood up, and as I turned to leave, I felt lighter. I had faced past, listened to her apologies, and articulated my boundaries. It was a small victory, but it meant the world to me. I wouldn't be held captive by the chains of betrayal any longer. As I walked away from the park, I felt a newfound sense of freedom. I was no longer defined by my history with Jessica. Instead, I was carving out a future for myself, one filled with hope, laughter, and maybe even love again with Sarah. I could finally embrace the possibilities ahead of me without looking back. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had taught me valuable lessons about trust, self-worth, and the importance of prioritizing my happiness. I was ready to face whatever came next, unburdened by the past and excited about the future. Somewhere deep down, I knew that I had emerged stronger from the ashes of betrayal. I had reclaimed my life, and I was moving forward, ready to embrace the next chapter with open arms.